May 1st Stormwater Management Commission to order, and as usual, the first item of business we have is to approve or review and approve the meeting minutes and decision letters from our April 2024 meeting. It's customary for us to do that in public format, so I'll let the commissioners review that and give a couple moments also as we wait for Commissioner Janie Camp to arrive. I'll entertain a motion whenever we're ready.
I would move to accept and pass the meeting minutes from April 3rd and the decision letters as presented to the commission.
Great, we have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None? Motion carries. All right, first case to be heard today is case number 2024-0008, Gay Street Park. If the applicant could come to the row of chairs in the front. And I'll let Logan introduce the case, unless we have another item.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to recuse myself from this one just due to our office's involvement in the case.
Great. All right, so Commissioner Oliver is recusing himself from this case. Okay.
Opening statement to the applicant. If you are not satisfied with a decision made by the Stormwater Management Commission, you may appeal the decision by filing for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the Commission's decision. You are advised to seek the independent advice of legal counsel to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been satisfied. Case number 1 on the agenda is case 2024-00008, Gay Street Park at 428 and 510 First Avenue North. APN is 082-1400-3801 and 082-1400-3800. Inspector is MPDES. Council District 19, Jacob Cupin. Applicant's request: disturbance of the floodway buffers of the Cumberland River to construct landscaped areas, permeable pavers, a bioretention pond, a sports court, ball field, greenway, and pavilion. Continuous mowing and maintenance of the floodway buffers, modified buffer signage, educational signage proposed. Appellant is Metro Parks and Greenways, represented by Joseph Stovall, Metro Parks. Comments: Stormwater staff. The site has worked with staff to provide mitigation and an LID site design. Codes, no comment provided. Planning, no comment provided. Greenways approved. Greenways has an interest in a greenway and or greenway easement, and the submittal is approved as is.
Great, I'll give you a quick rundown of how this will happen. I think some of you may have been here before, but you'll have 10 minutes to present your case. I'll give you a 2-minute warning, then we'll close the presentation, open it up for public comment for those that are here just in support of or against. We will close public hearing and then open it up for the commission to deliberate, and we may have some questions for you as part of that. All right, so I'll start the clock after you both introduce yourselves, and we'll go from there.
Morning. Thank you all for hearing our request for a variance. My name is Michael Underwood. I'm a water resources engineer with KCI Technologies.
Hey guys, Will Marth here with Hawkins Partners. We're the landscape architects.
Next slide, please. So I just want to go through the 3 variance requests. Again, disturbance of the floodway buffer of the Cumberland River. And a little part of that is also bioretention that's going to be in that zone 2 and 1 buffers. Variance 2 is continuous mowing and maintenance of those buffers. And variance 3 is modification of the buffer signage to allow for educational signage. So just to give you where the project is located, this is in the downtown loop, just north of James Robertson, along the Cumberland River. The FEMA floodway here and floodplains, this project sits up on the bluff and is not within the 100-year, the floodway, or the 500-year, as we'll show you. So talk about the existing conditions. You can see the 2 parking lots are the prominent features of the project, which is outlined in red there. Those are Metro parking lots. And you can see the Zone 1 and Zone 2 buffers. Zone 1 is blue, Zone 2 is green. Also, you can see the yellow line is the 500-year. It looks like it goes into the park a little bit, but we'll show you a cross-section of what that actually looks like. A couple other prominent features here, the greenway that goes through the site and the grassy field in the middle, and then the riparian buffers that's about 40-foot width from the current parking lots excuse me, to the Cumberland River. So just some photos we'll go quickly through. This is showing the south parking lot. And photo 3 and 4, you can see the greenway on the top left. Photo 4 shows the only part of the area that actually has storm drainage. It's all these little inlets that collect, and if you go to the next photo, it goes out into this riprap pad that's not shown in the current aerial, but has been installed in the past year. It comes out in a little PVC pipe in the head wall there. So photos 6 and 7 shows just that grassy area and some of the mature trees that we're working to save on this project. Photo 8 shows the overlooking the Cumberland River. Photo 9 just shows more of the parking lot and grassy field. And then just to show you some of the riparian buffer, photo 11 is looking down at the retaining wall that's there. In some places it's 10 feet, some places it's about 30 feet, but it's well above the floodplains there. And the last photo, this is taken from the James Robertson Bridge. So that building on the left to the railroad bridge on the right is our park area with the buffers. So variance 1, disturbance of the floodway buffers. So I just wanted to give you a land use type map that shows the areas of blue is impervious, green is the grass, and then dark green is the riparian buffer. So currently, stormwater management, the site for the LID requirements has a runoff value of greater than 0.4, so we can meet that redevelopment requirement for this site, which means we have to go below only 0.4 for the proposed. And this is 58% impervious. And if you go to the next slide, you can see we have a 22% reduction in impervious here, or about 0.23 acres. Want to mention a couple things, and then we'll talk about the park features, but the pink there is landscaped areas that we'll talk about with native species going in there. And the light blue you see is all permeable pavement design. It's hard to see, and I apologize for that, but there is a bioretention up there kind of in that pink area. And we are in conversations with Courtney Larson and Metro Parks about the best way to do the stormwater management for this site. There's a couple areas here that give us issues. One, there's very shallow bedrock according to our geotechnical report, so it's hard to get any depth on our stormwater management devices. And 2, it's a linear site, so anything we put in to treat either water quality or LID is going to take away a key park feature, because we've tried water quality swells, we've tried infiltration trenches, and they just take away either the fitness area or a large portion of the ball field. One other thing to note is we're working with Courtney, as I mentioned on this. She recommended us to go through this variance approval before we continue with the design in order to allow for management devices within the buffers.
So now I'm going to talk just a little bit about park features. Greenway, as you can see, is still planned to weed through the site. We work closely with Parks and Greenways teams to make sure we're meeting all their required standards. In addition to the Greenway, we're really excited to replace the existing parking lots with uses such as multi-purpose fields, a playground, overhead structures for shade and gathering, outdoor fitness, and a multi-sport court on the north side of the site made by repurposing the existing parking lot. In addition to these uses, we plan to improve the existing overlook along the bluff and provide a secure edge along that bluff there and offer up views for the community towards the Cumberland River and the East Bank. Now I'm going to hand it back to Michael to talk about the relationship of the floodway to the river.
Next slide, please. There we go. So this is just where the cross-section we took is located. And if you want to go to the next slide. This is cross-section showing the 500-year and 100-year over there on the right in comparison to the park. These numbers were taken from the FEMA FIS flood profiles and represent the highest elevation that we would see from those profiles. So you can see our site is well above even the 500-year. And we're not planning on working in the riparian buffer at all. So we're gonna be avoiding that. We may be taking out some invasives, some select trees, but mainly working on invasives there. Variance 2, continuous mowing and maintenance of the floodway buffers. And that's just a continuation of variance 1.
Yeah, so from a landscape perspective here, we plan to maintain the majority of the existing trees on site. You see those as the lighter green circles there. The darker green circles are the proposed trees that we plan to add here to help with the urban tree canopy. Light green will be sod, and medium green would be made up of native shrubs and perennials to help stabilize the grades and provide habitat in the area. We plan to have a bioretention facility, as Michael mentioned, along the bluff to help treat our stormwater from the site. And in order to maintain these planted features, we're asking for a variance to allow for continuous mowing and maintenance. Also wanted to mention that along First Avenue, we're proposing a road diet that helps us to get street trees and a landscape strip along First Avenue that helps kind of buffer pedestrians from vehicles and again adds to that urban tree canopy. With this current plan, we are exceeding the landscape ordinance requirements.
And one thing I want to mention about the road diet on First Avenue is we are removing an inlet that goes to the combined sewer system. And that's the only part of the project that did go to the combined sewer system. So we're completely removing that section of First Avenue from the CSS.
You have 2 minutes.
Variance 3, modification. As y'all are aware, you have to have 100 foot, or every 100 feet you have to have signs for the buffers, but we're requesting a variance to change that to do educational signage, to talk about the benefits of riparian buffers, the bioretention, and other things.
And just quickly to hit on the community benefit provided through this project, in this urban environment, we're really deficient in green space and opportunities for play and recreation. We're providing many of those needed facilities and programs that were identified in the Plan to Play master plan. And we hope that these will help with those deficiencies. And next slide. This just kind of gives a visual here to better illustrate some of those intended uses for the site. That concludes the presentation.
Thank y'all.
Great, thank you. Now I'll open up public comment. Is there anybody here to speak in favor of or against? Okay, seeing none of the audience. Logan, have we received any letters?
Oh, we didn't receive anything official. There were some people that reached out asking some questions, and everything seemed to be favorable from those people. So,
okay, great. All right, I'll close public comment and open it up to the commissioners for discussion.
Is this a preliminary or final?
they're submitting as final.
The reason I was asking is because Shallow Rock, bioretention, still working through things with Courtney.
Yeah.
I don't know how we approve a final that we don't know what the final design is.
Yeah, we've had some of those discussions, so I don't know what kind of infiltration testing has been done or geotech testing has been done exactly, but.
I mean, I think we can approve a final, but if anything changes, they would have to come back for another variance request if they modify the plan, is the way that I would see it.
Yeah, that's correct.
But I understand your concern as well, that we may be hearing the same case. I do want to say before we get kind of into full discussion, I wanted to say I really appreciate the well thought out and organized presentation. For anyone else listening or who may have something in front of the commission, you all did a great job explaining the variance request and going through each one. So that's a great example of what we would like to see here at the commission. Well, going back to Commissioner Fulmer's comment, and Logan, you may be able to give a little guidance here, but what is the push for a final variance versus a preliminary here? And ultimately, it is it is up to the applicant to decide what they want to present to the commission, but just was wondering if we feel like we may be back here with an updated design in the future.
So I don't know that I've been in some of those discussions with Courtney. I don't know how she feels about it exactly. Yeah, can you guys speak a little bit more to that maybe?
Sure. We were trying to get all the stormwater measures approved first. And then in talking to Courtney, like I said, she came back. So I don't know if she meant final approval or preliminary, but from our perspective, we're hoping to get a final approval now, knowing that we've looked at all the stormwater. This is our final stormwater design. But if we have to come back in the future, then we have to come back. We're aware of that.
I was in some of those meetings with Courtney, and part of the issue was their site is so encumbered by a buffer, they would need to put a lot of their SEMs, their green infrastructure in the buffer, and you have to have a variance to put it in the buffer. So it was a chicken and the egg. We weren't able to review sheet flow and those measures without knowing that they were going to have the permission to put them there.
Can we go back to the site plan that showed the bioretention areas? And how many, or what was the extent of that? I know it was shaded all the same color, and I wasn't sure which portion of that was bio, unless it was the contours that were graded out.
Right. So you can see the bioretention up there. It's pretty much that green area in the V right there. So that's the best area we had to place, and a lot of that will be treating the sports court, because everything else sheet flows off the site except for the sports court.
Is it,
Yeah, it looks to be just that color, that area. I know that there's a lot of shallow rock in that area, and so I'm trying to think back. How much area, is it just the sport court going to?
And the area that just sheet flows naturally to that section as well.
But you would just swap it out for a water quality unit?
Correct. We would pursue the LID waiver and then maybe eventually pursue paying into the fund as well. So that's where we're getting to with Courtney and Rebecca when we're talking to them, was, do we need to pursue that waiver before we came here?
And where's the plastic pipe that discharges the parking lot?
If you look at Joe Johnson Avenue, if you just extend that out to the wall where that Outlook label is, that's where that is. And that came in prior to our work on the project. It was done by off-site project.
Are you asking about the outfall, like the new retaining wall?
Right.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, if it could be utilized for a connection.
Yeah, it comes from the CJC project, I believe, that's across the street. And it was a separation of the combined sewer. So that's a new outfall from that project.
Gotcha.
okay, any other concerns? Hi, Janie.
Hi. Sorry, I'm late.
It's okay.
I mean, obviously, great community benefit.
Yeah.
Existing use is not at all. Just parking lot with no treatment.
And that's what I was going to say. I don't love seeing the impervious surface in the zone 1 for the basketball court. In this particular instance, it's already an existing impervious surface. So that's not something that we would love to see, but understanding it's not, from the plan that I'm seeing, this will be a much better, I think, use for the community, and we are already reducing the current impervious surface that's there in this, in the proposed area.
Yeah, it's an important part to make here is that we're in favor of this plan, given the community benefit component of the proposal.
For the commissioners, the additional mitigation that they're proposing, there's additional trees. I would like for the trees to be in the zone 1, zone 2, but I think that it looks, based on the plan, there's limitations because of the riparian buffer and the drop off there. But any thoughts on the current mitigation plan?
We're caught in this tough spot of trees should be in the buffers, but at the same time, as a city, we're making a push to draw attention to the Cumberland. And so if this were a smaller stream, a smaller floodway channel, I think it'd be a lot different. But we're really trying to activate the Cumberland. We're really trying to get attention to it, hoping to get more people out on it. And so this one's just a little bit different. If this were a private development, it'd be a completely different perspective, from my opinion. But
And also it's 15 feet above the 500-year.
I move that we approve the variance as submitted.
Okay, we have a motion to approve as submitted. We have a second. Mr. Lewis has seconded that. Any discussion?
I think just as a clarification, we're essentially approving the bioretention to be in that location if bioretention is the final plan. If you switch to LID waivers, those don't come to us. Payment in lieu doesn't come to us. So I think that this is a way to approve it, knowing that there could be modifications, and if staff deems those need to come back to us, then so be it. But
Okay. All right, we'll document that in the minutes as well. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, seeing none, and we have one abstained, or one recused, excuse me, and one abstained, Ms. Camp.
you needed 4 and you got it.
All right, motion carries. Good presentation, thank you. Great community benefit. Hopefully this gets through this year or next. All right. I think we have a day full of community-related projects. The next one is the Nashville Zoo Bridge expansion. If the applicant could come to the chairs in the front. This is case number 2024-00009. And while the applicant is getting seated, I'll let Logan introduce the case.
Case number 2 on the agenda is case 2024-00009, Nashville Zoo Bridge Expansion at 3777 Nolensville Pike. APN is 133-000000400. Inspector is NPDES, Council District 26, Courtney Johnston. Applicant's request, disturbance of the stream buffers of Kathy Joe Branch to expand an existing boardwalk. Appellant is Nashville Zoo, represented by Steve Casey, Civil and Environmental Consultants Incorporated. Comments, Stormwater staff, an alternative site plan showing the Farmers Market Boardwalk expansion area being located outside the buffer was not submitted as part of the application. Codes, no comment provided. Planning, no comment provided. Greenways is not requesting a greenway or a greenway easement and does not want to influence the Stormwater Management Commission's deliberations.
All right, I think this applicant's been here before. If you need me to tell you the way this is going to go down? Okay, all right. In that case, I will open up the floor for the applicant and start the timer after the introductions.
My name's Steve Casey with Civil and Environmental Consultants, and we are appreciative of the opportunity to represent the zoo here today.
And I'm Drew Stokes with Civil and Environmental Consultants. Thanks. The zoo, since COVID, has had unprecedented growth, and they are very busy during their busy season, and that's caused the main entry bridge in and out of the zoo near the entry village and the gift shop to become really crowded and cause, pedestrian traffic jams. So the CEO of the zoo came to us and asked us to pursue this variance to expand the bridges, make them 4 feet wider on each side, to get across Kathy Joe Branch, which originates on the zoo property. And so here we are today asking for that variance. Some of the technical info on the bridge, they're planning on replacing the deck of the entire bridge and its expansion with like a composite decking. It will have gaps in that decking to allow water to penetrate through without flowing off the sides or anything like that, just in between the planks. The farmers market area that we got a question about, that is going to be used both for a farmer's market, but additional programming with animals. I know the zoo walks their flamingos up there every day for flamingo feedings, and it just gets too crowded during busy days, and the flamingos are uncomfortable. They also bring other animals up there for kids to greet and see. And we are also planning on buffer mitigation to the buffer, both on site at the bridge and off site on zoo property near the petting zoo area. So we're going to remove the invasives and replant per the plan that we have. Steve, do you have anything else?
Yeah, just a couple of things to add. The existing boardwalk already is pervious. So the replacement of the decking it's an in-kind type of thing. It's more of a maintenance issue, but instead of just adding 4 feet on either side, that was going to be too difficult. They just needed to replace the whole thing. The other thing I wanted to point out is just the square footage difference. The encroachment within the buffer that is being requested is, I believe, 1,456 total square feet. That's zone 1 and 2, and the stream itself. The invasive removal that is being proposed near the petting zoo area, which is further downstream on Kathy Joe Branch, is a little over 40,000 square feet. So just wanted to point out the difference there. And the zoo sees the benefit of doing that invasive removal as well, just from an aesthetic standpoint, not only the health of the stream. So.
Do you guys have any questions or public comment?
If that's the end of your presentation, we'll close the presentation and open it up for public hearing. Is there anybody here to speak in favor of or against in the audience? Seeing none. Logan, have we received any, as Chair Dodd would say, blimps, airmail, smoke signals?
No, there was nothing on this case.
Okay. Closing public comment and opening up for commissioners for discussion.
I have a point of clarification, just to
Okay.
make. So there was a previous variance that was heard a few years ago for the zoo, which
Yes.
you may remember. This mitigation for this project was the same mitigation that they used for that project, because that project's not moving forward right now. So if that project does move forward, they'll come back and provide new mitigation for that project.
So is all the mitigation that was required for that project being used here, or is it a portion of it? Be a question for Ms. Stacy.
That project did not move forward, and I believe the approval expired. But yes, this was the same, Logan's right, this is the same area that was proposed for mitigation for that particular project.
That's for the offsite over by the petting zoo. There is mitigation at the existing bridge and where we're expanding. The previous approval had mitigation proposed at the other site where the project is no longer occurring.
Yeah, so this is the same off-site mitigation area.
Yeah, there's an on-site, well, they're both within the zoo property,
Yeah.
in the same stream, it's just different parts of the zoo.
Logan, can you confirm that the last variance has expired? So either way, they would have to come back before us if they decide to move forward with that project.
Yeah,
Do you know?
they would have to come back if they
Okay,
decide to move
so it
forward.
has.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, there's an existing boardwalk in this area. This is a widening of that. Is there anything else that's being added as part of this pathway expansion?
Just the surface area is the only thing being added. If that answers your question.
Okay, that area that the stone's circling right now is the new lookout, basically? Or?
Yeah, that's the area that's, was for the flamingo exhibit, or not exhibit, but the flamingos to walk up there as well as the farmer's market concept.
It's just a programming area that the zoo can use for different animals.
And that is all the wood decking that's
Yeah.
spaced? Yeah, okay.
And it's immediately adjacent to the gift shop.
So I just want to confirm, is there already decking in that location, or we're expanding further?
Right.
Yeah.
Where you see the different hatching is new decking.
So that is all in the Zone 1 buffer, correct?
Yes.
And there's disturbance below that, or it's just going to be the decking material that would be extended and not disturbed below it based on what you're
The only disturbance would be just the piles that go into the ground to support. There's still, the decking is just covering the buffer. It would be, 6 or so feet above the existing ground.
Yeah, you can see those posts there. Those would need to be reworked. And the zoo, Rick Schwartz explained to us the way they did this the last time, which they plan to do this time, is they drill for that post and then place it and then basically remove, they don't leave any, there's no disturbance other than just putting that one hole in and for the post. They're very methodical about not having a large disturbed construction area there right next to the stream. They do one post at a time, and at the end of the day, remove everything, come back the next day, start again until they're done. So.
And then what is the, thank you for that explanation. Assuming there is quite a bit of equipment needed to do that sort of work, now the disturbance long-term, I think is what you were describing, is what is the plan to mitigate the construction activities happening within the zone to build that?
We've shown sediment tubes in that vicinity for sediment control during construction. Post-construction, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but
We have a planting plan that
Yeah.
will, after we remove invasives, which is happening after construction, we'll go back with the planting plan, plant trees in the buffer.
But as far as underneath the decking itself, there's not vegetation now. There is actually some riprap that was placed when the entry village was originally built. There's not a real big need. There's not a lot of runoff coming through there. And so even though there's not vegetation covering underneath the boardwalk currently, we don't anticipate a real need for that going forward. This is a small expansion beyond what is currently covered, if you will.
Have you created any alternative proposals to move that farmer's market area out of the buffer zone? Was that explored?
We have not. No, it's a really tight spot. We've got, if you see the Y right there of the boardwalk, there's bioretention within the Y to the north, and then as you get down across the stream to the southern side, we've got existing playgrounds, existing exhibits. They're really kind of running out of space along the main pathways at the zoo. So I think the Rick Schwartz, the CEO, really wants that area right at the gift shop for programming specific needs too.
And if I may add to that, the thinking behind the farmer's market is that is not something that he would want being sold in the zoo somewhere, and then people having to carry what they've purchased through the zoo, around the exhibits and so forth. He really was thinking something near the exit so that they can have that when they're going to the gift shop and then head to their cars. The challenge is there's very limited space to do that anywhere on the other side of Kathy Jo Branch before getting to the exit.
Okay, so I'm kind of curious because the farmer's market would be beyond the entrance gates for people to pay admission to the zoo, correct?
Yes, it's behind the admissions gate.
So
That's
there's
correct.
not a place outside the entrance for the farmer's market that would work, that individuals could participate in farmer's market, not pass, swiping the card or paying admission?
That's correct. The Rick Schwartz's desire was to have this to be a benefit to those coming to the zoo as they were leaving, similarly to the gift shop is also behind the, having to gain admission to the zoo.
All right. I feel like there's another place that could be on the property, maybe even outside the box here, over in the kind of top right corner. I understand the point, but, that's in the zone 1. And I feel like there's other locations for that to be. I understand the interest and premise of that, but I feel like there could be another approach made.
The use of a farmer's market was not intended to be the main use of that space. The animal programming, which is what the zoo is all about, is what the intention, having the flamingos walk out there and having more space for animals to be in that area as people both enter and exit the zoo, to get more like a out of exhibit up close feel to the animals is the main purpose of that. We named it Farmers Market just because that was one of the initial ideas, but the motivation behind that space is more for the animals.
I think this is where the alternative site plan really comes into play and really helps to understand what options have been evaluated and what, is really driving the need for the specific location and the variance requested. I think without having that, it's really hard to, understand the need for this particular part of it.
And one of the conditions for a variance that we have to look at the variance shall only be issued upon a determination that the variance is the minimum necessary considering the flood hazard to afford relief. And then one of the other criteria is the modifications to the buffer area shall be the minimum necessary to achieve a reasonable buildable area as decided by the committee. So just wanted to pull up our fun regulations.
Yeah, I think I'm a little less concerned about expanding the walkway as someone who's been to the zoo multiple times with children. I understand the congestion of those areas, but I also feel like there are other places for animal encounters to happen. And, a farmer's market could be a designated area of the parking lot, potentially that is like roped off or, some sort of cover there without encroaching on the zone 1. So I personally would like to see an alternative plan. Expanding the walkway seems to be less invasive and intrusive, and it's just adding to what's already there, as opposed to, this, what seems to be somewhat significant additional space.
Thanks for that. I wanted to see what conversations the applicant had with staff in developing this plan. Was it Mr. Hunt or Ms. Doan, or who was taking the lead on that? And can you give us some context because I'm assuming you all had worked with them to discuss this Zone 1 disturbance and how best to tailor it?
So we did have an on-site meeting. I was present. I don't think Rebecca was there. Just to discuss the mitigation that we had previously talked about in the other project.
Okay.
I don't know that we really talked about alternative site plans at that time, but.
Mr. Hunt, I saw you turn your mic on. Do you have anything?
Yeah, I was just going to say, in evaluating this one at the end, the expansion seemed to be covered in the application as far as the hardship need. We really just didn't see anything as far as the expansion for the farmer's market. Not saying that there wasn't, but we really didn't see that because there wasn't an alternative plan or a rationale as far as why it needed to be put there, which is why the comment was made.
Thank you. Okay.
Question, one of the plans talks about relocated stream buffer signage. Is that the old little placards, or what's the plan for?
Yeah, there's a stream buffer sign, the standard Metro stream buffer sign that's posted on a tree as you cross the bridge, as you enter the zoo. And we were planning on, since that tree will have to be removed to expand, because the tree's right up against the existing edge of the boardwalk, we will have to move it back either on a post on the bridge or on a tree that's adjacent to the new edge of boardwalk.
Do you think there's an opportunity, instead of buffer signage, that placard, to do just a consolidated educational sign of some sort?
Absolutely, yeah. The zoo has artists on staff that have been happy in the past to do educational signage for previous stormwater variances. So that's definitely something we can do.
Can you speak a little bit more to, and I apologize, I think you may have spoken to it earlier, I just didn't catch it. Seeing the photos, there's a lot of bare earth in a lot of the spots underneath and adjacent to the bridge, and I think you spoke a little bit to the plan that will address that. Can you speak to that one more time?
Yeah, the current state of the land underneath the bridge is, there's some areas of riprap, there's some of just bare soil where there's not enough light to support vegetation. As you can see on that one photo there, it's encroaching in there, but near the center, it's not, the vegetation is not supported. Because there is not active erosion being observed there, I guess what I was trying to communicate is I don't see a need to do some hard armoring all the way underneath that, which would be one way to address erosion concerns when there's a lack of sunlight to support vegetation. And I foresaw that with the expansion of the walkway that it's going to be very similar to what it is now. Does that help?
It does. I understand the lack of sunlight, but there are a number of different ways to, I think, approach that and to really create a better environment, especially if we're creating a condition that creates the shade and creates the environment that we're seeing. I guess I would challenge you to challenge your landscape architect to find some solutions that would improve it, especially if the request is to expand and create more shade under there that there may not, I'm not certain about the erosion aspect, just seeing the pictures, but I think it's something that should definitely be addressed if we're talking about expanding something like that.
Okay.
Is the mitigation area on campus downstream of this area, or is it upstream?
It's downstream.
Okay, I think there's two components that we should consider as the commissioners of, number one, the public benefit, and then two, the opportunity for an extensive mitigation offset for the impact of the buffer on campus. It's a bit unique considering our other cases that do not have that opportunity, where it's a sole site without any acreage or streams going through it to mitigate the impact. So I understand that our regulations are designed to try to fit all, but in this case, I think our duty is to look at these site-specific with using the guidance from the regulations and provide reasonable opportunity for the applicant to mitigate their disturbance of the buffers. So let's talk a little bit more about your mitigation. So can you help us dive a little bit deeper into that and tell us what you're proposing based on the impact of the zone 1 and 2?
Yeah, so we plan to go in and remove all invasives. We're going to by hand, and then we'll spray pesticides after we cut those invasives off, and then we'll go back in after the invasives are removed and abide by the planting plan and plant native vegetation per, what's the guidance, the stream buffer handbook?
Yeah, that TDEC produced, or not TDEC, but Department of Forestry. Buffer mitigation guide. It's explained in the notes there. Yeah, do you have a question?
Yeah, can you quantify it for me? I understand the pulling of the invasives, but how many square feet of disturbance and how many square feet of mitigation are we proposing?
The 41,180 square feet is the area of invasive removal, as well as followed by plantings.
And how many square feet of buffer disturbance?
1,456 square feet.
1,000 square feet of disturbance and then 41,000 square feet of mitigation?
I'll say them one more time. 1,456 square feet of encroachment, and then 41,180 square feet of invasive removal and planting. So a much larger portion of invasive removal and planting. And just to clarify too, on the invasive removal, the zoo has done this in the past. And what they do is they cut the, just by hand, cut the invasives, and then they paint with a herbicide that's got dye in it so they know where they've been. So it's not a broadcast type of situation either.
Yeah, I think that goes back to what I was trying to build the point of is we have a situation where we have a disturbance that's 1,400 square feet and an opportunity to do almost an acre or 41,000 square feet of mitigation on site, which is pretty unique, I think, for the cases that we see. So I think there's two components that are maybe support this case is number one, most importantly, the public benefit. Number two, the opportunity for mitigation. Now, when the future project comes back, and I think Logan's going to confirm that that mitigation area has now, or that variance has expired, we'll find ourselves in a similar position where we'll be asking for that type of mitigation for these types of buffer disturbances that are above and beyond what we typically allow. But for this case, just say 1 to 40,000 is pretty substantial. So I think we should consider that as we work towards a motion.
Well, another consideration is water can go through the boards, and it is not preventing some sort of low-light growth from being underneath the boardwalk. And there's no erosion. We're not pouring concrete on top of it. So it's a little unique.
Well, can you describe your, thanks for that clarification, by the way. Can you describe, the planting plan shows a number of trees. What happens below them in the area that you're removing all the invasives? You have a hatched area. I don't know if something else is happening within that area, or if the planting plan is just the trees. Does that make sense?
Oh. Okay. Yeah, the planting plan is primarily the trees. In the past, the zoo has supplemented that at times. I think with this, we'd probably just look at straw and maybe some native. I can't remember, honestly. I apologize. If we had specified a seed mix in addition to that, we did. Okay. So yeah, it would be, and we had specified something similar in our last variance case. Okay. Was this the riparian mix? Yeah, it's a riparian seed mix.
But I think that's important because I think it is important to provide some cover for the bare soil that's out there, especially for going in and removing the invasive and exotic material, going back and seeding something and then stabilizing it with some kind of coconut or straw mat to ensure that, I appreciate the canopy that's going back in there, but also thinking about that ground plane, I think is an important aspect of it, just to create an environment that's really going to be beneficial. And if you're going through all the work of doing this, which I really appreciate, especially, looking at the comparison of the disturbance to mitigation, something that's really going to keep the invasives, one, from coming back, which we know is a lot of work, and two, is going to create an environment that really improves the quality and the health of that stream.
Agreed, and I'll just add to, when the zoo has done this in the past, the disturbance has been so little that some of the existing just ground cover type vegetation has been able to remain. And that's why, we had talked about different ideas here, but we are going to do the seed mix where it's needed. But there's not an intention there to do any sort of mass grade kind of thing just to plant seed.
Sure. No,
So-
yeah, totally agree with that approach. Yeah, we're not asking to disturb more to plant something
Right.
new, for sure. Yeah, thank you.
Well, I am thinking of putting together a motion, acknowledging that we may not be all in agreement. But Commissioner Oliver, based off of your comments, is there any additional requirements to the mitigation plan that you would propose if I were to put together a motion?
I think I would just add and to clarify that the bare soil and disturbed areas will have that seed mix and stabilization component to it, in addition to the planting, the canopy plan that we're seeing here today.
Before you do that, Mr. Commissioner Lewis, you have any thoughts on this one? Okay, just give you the opportunity.
I would also add that given, the new addition of like farmers market area and the expansion of the walkway, which is going to prevent light from getting to the plants that are existing there, that consideration be given to erosion control under the walkway and the farmers market area, and possibly some plantings of low light vegetation that could help with erosion. And as Commissioner Dodd used to talk about the sponginess underneath, because of we're essentially removing 1,400 square feet that is potentially vegetated now along the stream banks. So creating a barren area there that could be more susceptible to erosion because there's not plants to help hold the soil in place is a concern of mine.
Does the zoo have any program to maintain the erosion of their streams going through the property?
Yes, they do.
Okay. So I'm noting that as part of your motion potentially.
Yes, my motion may get shot down, but I would move to approve the variance request for the 4-foot extension of the current boardwalk. However, I would not, as a part of this motion, I would want to take from the variance request the additional extension for the farmer's market as presented, since there wasn't an alternative plan and it's within the Zone 1 buffer. Also, as clarifications on this motion, the educational signage, I think that could replace the current placard that is there. I also want to clarify that when performing the mitigation efforts that we have bare soil, clarify that the bare soil will have seed mix and stabilization, and that there should be consideration of soil erosion near the stream banks when the work is to be performed.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. It's been seconded by Mr. Oliver. All right, any other discussion?
I think that we need the applicant to clarify the mitigation if we're bifurcating the two requests. Because we've essentially cut the request in half without them telling us what type of mitigation was allocated to the 4-foot expansion and what was allocated to the, more, we'll keep calling it farmer's market expansion, but more of the square footage expansion. And so is that?
Yeah.
I think that's fair, and I'm open to amend my current motion. Because as I was thinking about this as well, I am not obviously opposed for them to come back and ask for another variance associated with the farmer's market. I think where I struggled a bit is we have to look at what is presented, and I frequent the zoo often. I love the zoo. I love the flamingo walks. I love everything about it, but based off of what I've seen, I also believe that there's alternative areas, but they could come back and tell us there's not, and there really is a hardship associated with it that I don't see here today. So I agree with what you're saying. I don't want to take all the mitigation associated with that, and then they come back and not have a mitigation plan to show us if they come back for an additional request.
Yeah, I feel like an alternative site plan would get more support for the current proposal, so that's why I'm hesitant to, one, take all their mitigation, but two, I know we're moving away from deferrals, but at the same time, if we separate these two, I know everybody here seems to be in support of the widening. And just feeling a little more comfortable about alternative site plan would probably gain more support.
Yeah.
For the expansion.
Right. While we're trying to minimize deferrals, I almost feel like this is exactly the kind of case that would be valuable as opposed to them having to identify mitigation for the farmer's market area and come back with a new variance request, a new plan. I see Mike shaking his head over there. Because coming back with an alternative site plan and saying, this is what we're going to do, and allowing it to even be presented bifurcated so that one part could potentially be approved and the other considered more thoroughly in addition to what we're considering today might make sense.
And including the ground cover under the bare soil and all the deck areas.
A more holistic package to allow all these things that have been brought up to be considered fully would be good.
Do y'all have major time constraints where you would like to move forward with one or circle back?
That's a good question, Jay. I don't know. I do know that the widening is, from my understanding, is the priority. But I also, again, just speaking on behalf of the zoo, in my understanding, I don't know that they'd want to move forward with just doing the widening. If there was a chance, they might be able to do the whole thing. So.
Let's go. Go ahead. Did you have a follow-up to that?
No,
Okay.
Just, it seems like there's some simple ways.
Yeah.
But they could have a lot of unintended consequences. So I think that we'll just reopen it back up to you to make a decision on how you'd like to proceed.
May I add one thing to that? Let's try to maybe come to a compromise. If we're widening the bridgeway, Ms. Jones, could you go back to and this is all working towards maybe an amended motion potentially.
Or it could be my motion being shot down in the decision to defer, since there's already a motion.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna throw one more wrench in that gear.
My feelings will not be hurt.
You're certainly good at putting these together. Is there a modified version of this expanded area that's considered as the larger portion of the deck, that's not the 4-foot extension, that could be reduced to being a 4-foot extension to match what we're proposing to grant to widen that area? So carry the 4-foot extension on around over to the gift shop.
So essentially being able to approve a plan that has the 4-foot expansion all the way to the gift shop, but not the additional area for the animal, the flamingos and the farmer's market.
Yes.
My opinion right now, off the cuff, would be the zoo would prefer to have permission to do something sooner, and then they can choose to go that route, or they could decide, no, it's worth it to us to wait a couple of months and get, another application into the committee. So I think that would be something that we would like to see the commission permit.
You do look at what that square footage breakdown is and the percentage of increase relative to the overall application. I mean, it's so minor that we're, let's step back and really look at what we're analyzing here. And the buffer area that's being improved relative to that expansion area. I know there's been a couple people expressing concern. I think there's a few others that are supportive. I just don't know where the fourth vote is. So we'll leave it up to.
Okay, I'll throw one last final ditch option out there before we take a vote. Is there a portion of this 4-foot expansion, say I guess it would be on the left side of your screen, or even on the right, that's below the expanded flamingo and farmers market area, that could be eliminated and that square footage be used to expand the farmers market area? or to be used towards it. So basically take that, 4-foot stretch that's south of the farmer's market area and apply that square footage to expanding the Flamingo area.
Yeah, I'd hesitate to speak
Yeah.
to, I think that somewhat defeats the purpose of the expansion, because that is the end of the boardwalk. I think it would be a little bit artificial to limit the expansion
Okay.
on the boardwalk.
If they come in with a 5-foot expansion, would we have been hesitant to approve that versus 4? I mean, there's a lot of, I know you're relocating some expansion square footage, but.
Just the square footage piece in the
it's-
zone 1.
It's almost like they've come in with the minimum request needed, and, if they come in saying 5 foot was needed, then we'd probably be supportive of an expansion of 5 feet.
So just a very rough calculation based on the dimensions and the drawing for the farmer's market. It looks like we're talking about a little over 250 square foot beyond, in addition to the 4 foot. If the 4 foot was extended up to gift shop, the additional area, it may be closer to 300, but that's what we're talking about, of the real impacts of the farmer's market area. Just a rough calculation. So if that helps kind of put things in perspective in comparison with the 1,400 square foot being impacted.
Yep, I think that's a good point. And to build on that, does the staff have any comment related to the Zone 1 buffer disturbance, considering the amount of mitigation that's being doing over the 40,000 square feet?
I would go back to maybe the initial or a previous question about the deferrals. One of the things when staff gave input regarding the deferrals, I think anecdotally, what was coming to our mind were sites that had very limited input or interaction with staff and proposed very little mitigation, and it appeared by the discussion we're headed toward a denial. I think in the cases of sites where they do work with staff, they do provide mitigation, I think that is obviously a different situation, and we would certainly never limit the commission, nor have the ability to limit the commission if you feel a deferral is necessary. I think the scope of this is obviously very minimal in light of the mitigation. I think for us, it was more of the procedural elements, that this was something new outside of the well-explained need for traffic. It's an existing boardwalk, to expand that. So we just wanted to make sure the committee considered that, knew that, and contemplated that in their decision like they do on all their cases.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
And if there is a deferral, this is something that could be put on next month if the applicant is able to work with staff. Or Logan, do you foresee this going out?
I think it's going to depend on what
Yeah.
kind of work goes into that alternative site plan.
Correct.
Excuse me, I
Ms.
think sorry, but.
No, I'm sorry, I just want to clear up the motion. So there was a second, so you could discuss, and then let's just go back and clarify that you just go ahead and take a vote, and then because you're moving toward deferral, obviously I can't tell you how to vote, but just let the motion fail. And you can say the motion failed, and then we're back to where we started.
Okay.
You can still keep discussing, but at some point, that's where you need to get to.
When there's 6 members present, what is required to carry a motion?
Just a majority.
I mean, 4, is it 4, or is it, if it's a split 3-3?
If it's a split 3-3, it would be the chair. Oh, if it's a split 3-3, oh, I see what you're saying.
Our 7th member is no longer on the board.
I think it would just, so if it's split 3-3, I need to think about that.
Paper, rock, scissors.
Yes. Talk amongst yourselves. Let me think about that for a second. is that
Let's
where
keep
you-
discussing then.
Is that
We're
where
gonna
you-
forget
I'm
what you
not
said a
saying-
minute ago.
I'm not saying that the motion should fail, but I'm saying eventually we need to clean up that the motion is sort of floating out there. I just want to remind you before we
Acknowledged.
get too far
I
down the
think
road.
that tends to.
And then I'll
to
look
avoid
into the other issue right now if.
Let us know when you're ready.
Think it's going.
Commissioner Oliver, go ahead.
And ultimately, if my motion fails, someone can then submit another motion if they so choose. So, which may be more simple than amending and doing other, so just want to bring that up as well.
Go ahead.
I think the thing that I just want to be careful of is, I know we're talking about square footage and disturbance and all of that is good discussion. I think the 4 foot is a hardship because you need the expanded space to accommodate, and it's the only way to get across the stream. I think the hard thing is when you're saying we'd also like this additional space that seems like it's not circulatory, maybe it is, and maybe it just hasn't been, all of the reasons that you need it haven't been explained potentially. I think that's the hard thing is we have to look at what is the hardship for needing the variance, and the hardship for the 4 foot's pretty clear. Hardship for the expanded is not, and I just think it's important that we're really clear on how and why we are voting for that.
And I concur with Commissioner Oliver's statements. It was well articulated, probably better than some of the questions and statements that I have, but that is also my concern. And this is something that we have to look at for every case. And so, yeah.
I'm ready.
And that's why the alternative site plan is really important to say, we understand what the hardship is.
So there would need to be a majority for it to pass, and if there's no majority and you're deadlocked, then it would be it would deny, it would be a failure. You couldn't move forward. So essentially it would be a denial of the application.
If it's a 3-3 tie, it's denial?
Correct. Yeah,
Interesting.
yes.
That doesn't,
Well, it's an
that doesn't make
impasse.
sense.
It's a not approved, it's an impasse, it's a not, yeah.
Is the motion?
The motion's not
The motion
approved.
fail or the application fails?
The motion,
Yes. Yeah.
The motion
So that's not
yeah,
fair and just.
yeah,
Just the motion.
yeah, yeah.
Again, another motion
Let's go to
can,
a vote on the motion.
Okay, so go ahead, Mr. Lewis.
Yeah, just one of the things, listening to the back and forth, the farmer's market brings associations of things that it's probably not even going to be used for. Where I'm seeing from having been there and all that, it's more of an overflow area for the gift shop, which would be a big customer benefit, especially with the zoo attendance climbing. You know, with less than a 300 square foot area too, that's less than the area right in front of this panel. I think the main objective I'm hearing consistently from everyone is addressing the barren soil under the decked area, because it still can get rain in the event of a monsoon. It still would have some type of drainage issues. And if that could be addressed in your landscaping plan, I think that would bring a lot of bearing to the motion as presented, or the variance as presented.
I just want to kind of revisit the fact that the motion is excluding the farmer's market area.
correct.
That we would be voting on,
It's to deny it, the motion is.
to deny the farmer's market area.
Would be for the 4 foot extension on each side of the boardwalk based off of the need for traffic, foot traffic. But ultimately, I think we have maybe, and ultimately it's up to our chair, but I think that we've discussed this one, and I think it might be appropriate to call for a vote.
Yeah, so Commissioner Simpson, would you mind rereading your motion?
The current motion is to approve the variance for a 4 foot extension of the current boardwalk, a replacement of the current placard for an educational signage. We would want the bare soil to have seed mix and stabilization in the mitigation area, and there needs to be consideration during the work of the soil erosion near the stream banks associated with the expansion. But the current motion would not provide for approval of the farmer's market area that's outside of the 4 foot extension of the current boardwalk.
Okay. Does the current motion deny it, or does it defer the boardwalk or the expansion?
It's excluding it.
So basically, the current motion just gives them the ability to proceed with that specific improvement.
Correct.
And just for staff's clarification, with the current motion, would they taper the expansion of the boardwalk to where the existing boardwalk was, or would they continue a 4-foot section up to the gift shop?
Correct. So a 4-foot extension of the current boardwalk.
On that, where that would be?
Even where the farmer's market is proposed.
Okay, we have a clarification of the motion, and we have it properly seconded. Do you have any more discussion?
I think that we're going to give the applicant the opportunity to address the mitigation scaling in the event that these two are two separate items.
Yes. So in order to properly record that,
I think we have to terminate the motion in order to allow them to address what they're proposing, and then make another motion, even if it's the same, but that way we understand what the change to mitigation is.
Slide, you have an opinion on that?
I mean, we're denying, we're not going to approve one part with this motion. We're going to approve the other, but is it a prorated square footage? Is it
Ultimately,
all
my
of it?
understanding,
Is it nothing? Is it?
and our legal counsel can, but I'm kind of going under the Roberts Rules of Order. So there's a current motion. If that motion is not approved, then another motion can be brought forward. Even someone who brings a motion may decide after the conversation that they don't agree with the current motion on the table. So I would say
Is that a hint?
that, I'm not saying that's the case, but I think to move this forward, because I'm afraid that we are getting so caught up in the procedural that we vote on the current motion, and then if it doesn't pass, then we can present a motion or allow deferral based off of what the commission may want to do in this case.
Do you want to amend the motion based on a prorated?
I can't make the decision for them on mitigation, on what's been presented. I can't.
Yeah.
I think we should go to a vote.
I think we should go to a vote. Okay, a call a vote. All in favor, say aye. Is that one from Ms. Camp? Any others? Okay. Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye. It's 1, 2, 3, 4,
Motion
5. That motion fails according to that vote. Okay. All right. We're back to square one.
I think we should give the applicant the opportunity to modify their request as it relates to the square footage, breaking it, and the mitigation proposed. And I'd also be interested to know if you all have any insight on if the invasives are not removed, the kind of harm and future detriment that could provide to the stretch of the creek.
Okay, but does the applicant have a preference on that? Would you prefer this method, or would you prefer another, I don't know, would you like for us to come up with another motion that may be an alternate to what was previously presented? I think there's maybe some precedent for that.
I want to make sure I understand the question first. What I'm hearing you say is you want to know what amount of mitigation we want to apply to just a 4-foot boardwalk expansion? Okay. And then your second question was about if the mitigation does not go forward as originally proposed, what harm there might be to the Kathy Jo branch. Okay. So to answer the first question, I'll defer to Drew on the numbers here. I mean, I would probably look at, off the cuff, ratio, maintaining the same ratio. What I don't know off the top of my head is how much is zone 1 versus zone 2 and how that might affect that ratio, because we could look at it that way as well. And I don't think the zoo would have any problem with doing only a portion of this to get the boardwalk expansion, and then possibly adding to that in the future if they want to come back and ask for additional encroachment. You agree?
Yeah, I agree. I don't have exact numbers of the mitigate, we propose mitigation in both the full width of the Zone 1 and Zone 2 buffers.
Okay. So we would likely just reduce that by a similar ratio to what we have currently. Prorated. And as far as the second question goes, Kathy Jo Branch, as you know, is, exceptional Tennessee water. It, goes eventually to 7 Mile Creek, Mill Creek. Having invasives on the stream is not ideal. There's currently not a tremendous amount of active erosion in the vicinity that the mitigation is proposed. However, having native trees there with native seed mix on the ground and so forth would, I believe, improve the quality of the water by, additional shade, because instead of just having the privet and honeysuckle nearby, we're gonna have more canopy trees. Any minor erosion that may be happening because the invasives are preventing ground cover from growing, vegetation from growing on the ground to actually hold the soil in. Not removing that and putting that down is probably a bigger issue. Because in the past, when I've worked at the zoo, that's been a real problem. The invasives shading out the underlying soil, and they don't do a great job of holding the soil there. So there would be a big benefit there, and the visibility factor, I think, is something else to keep in mind. The mitigation area is immediately adjacent to the petting zoo and the walkway of the zoo. So just like with the water quality buffer signage, the zoo can do a really nice job of providing educational benefit at that location.
Thank you. I think that speaks to the weight of the mitigation and that it is really important and really beneficial.
I would second that and go to the amount of square footage that we have in contention versus the square footage of mitigation that's being done. It's 300 square foot deck area, the 1,400 square feet of deck area and the 41,000 square feet of mitigation downstream of this location. So just making that point again. If there's any desire for an alternate motion.
So I'll make a motion to approve the 4-foot expansion of the boardwalk for the distance noted as up to the gift shop and to prorate the mitigation with the adjusted square footage of that, just due to the lack of an alternative site plan to understand the expanded square footage requested for the other portion.
Would you like to have an educational sign in lieu of a placard?
Yeah, so I'll include in that the educational sign in lieu of the buffer placard, which I think is a great opportunity, as well as the stabilization of any of the potential erosion areas due to the expansion of the boardwalk, as well as the seed mix and stabilization that would be provided within the disturbed area where there's bare soil.
I'll add, go ahead.
I would second the motion.
Okay. We have a motion that's been properly seconded. Any discussion? And I will add that they'll need to work with staff to ensure that the reduced mitigation is appropriate. Okay. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Seeing none, motion carries as amended.
Thank you.
See you in 4 weeks. Thanks.
We may not see them in 4 weeks. If they can move the farmer's market elsewhere, they may not need to come before us, right?
All right. Hey, I'd like to take a short break. We'll plan to reconvene here at, let's say, 9:45. It's about a 10-minute break.
Who would start?
Back to order. I think we're all back in position. Calling the May 1st Stormwater Management Community meeting back to order from a short break. And we are continuing on with our agenda. We have 2 more cases and then some internal business thereafter. All right, the next item on the agenda is the case number 2024-00010, Davidson Branch Pump Station. The applicant has come to the table. Thank you, veterans. And I'd like for Logan to introduce the case.
Case number 3 on the agenda is case 2024-00010, Davidson Branch Pump Station at 6950 Charlotte Pike. APN is 102-0000-8800. Inspectors MPDES, Council District 35, Jason Spain. Applicant's request, allowance of 550 cubic yards of uncompensated fill to remain within the floodplain. Appellant is Metro Water Services, represented by Sarah Hooper, Barge Civil Associates. Comments, Stormwater staff, no comment provided. Codes, no comment provided. Planning, no comment provided. Greenways is not requesting a greenway and or greenway easement and does not want to influence the Stormwater Management Commission's deliberations.
Okay. With that, I think the applicant understands how this will work, so I will start the clock after your introductions.
Hello, my name is Sarah Hooper with Barge Civil Associates, and I'm the civil engineer of record on this project for the site design.
I'm Paul Stonecipher, design manager for Clean Water Nashville program, the consent decree program under EPA for I&I abatement, overflow abatement, and wet weathers, and kind of been shepherding this project for almost a decade. So thank you for this opportunity. And we've come before you with a kind of tough situation that we're in, and ask for your consideration. We come for you with reluctance internally too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this one's a little bit different in that the tank has already been constructed, and during the as-built process and getting our documents together, we discovered that our site does not balance in the as-built condition. We did balance it when the grading permit was originally approved. So that's why, and then we took several months of looking at, is there anywhere on the site that we could pick up this, get some more cut out of the site, and just going back and forth, we came to the reluctant decision that this was really our only path forward at this point. So we are asking for 550 cubic yards of uncompensated fill volume. I do want to point out that the volume of the equalization tank is included as fill volume. Kind of like you would with a detention pond, you have to include that water as fill. So that's part of our fill volume calculations. During design, we had a lot of hardships just getting it to balance. Because most of the site is below the 100-year base flood elevation, north of, you can see on the screen there, this is the as-built condition, so you can see the new pump station is on the southern portion of the site, that's correct. And so that sits up above the 100-year base flood elevation. The new pump station replaced the existing pump station, which was actually on an adjacent parcel to the east. And one of the main objectives was to get that new pump station up 2 feet above the 500-year base flood elevation, which we were able to do. So the remainder of the site is, it just drops down from there towards the river. You can see Davidson Branch is to the east of the site, and then the Cumberland River is right there. And then the area between the pump station and the tank is actually below, a lot of that is below the 2-year base flood elevation. And there's a conveyance that picks up water from Brookmead Park to the west and conveys it to the east straight across the site into Davidson Branch. So that area is really low. And then to the north of the equalization tank, there's actually almost 3 acres of wetlands to the north of that. There wasn't a lot of available room, and we were also trying to keep disturbance at a minimum because, of course, we have our Davidson branch has a modeled floodway, so we have our 75-foot Zone 1 and Zone 2 buffers that we were staying out of. And then just to give you guys a little bit of background, if you're not familiar, the equalization tank, basically during large storm events, when the sanitary sewer system gets inundated with I&I, the pump station cannot keep up with the rate of water coming in, and before this project was constructed, it would directly overflow into Davidson Branch, which it's a lot of stormwater in the pipes, but it was also meant that sewage was directly discharging into the waterway, and so the primary purpose of this project was to address that. So the equalization tank basically overflows from the pump station, are piped to the equalization tank so it can hold that stormwater and gradually release it back to the pump station so that the pump station can catch up and eliminate those overflows. So while the tank is fill, it's not really the same type of fill as regular earth because it's mostly stormwater that it's filled with. So the tank is actually, it's counted as fill in our calculations, but it's actually providing more storage if thought of in a different way during a flood event. So as I mentioned, we did look at alternate site plans during our as-built phase, and there really is no area, unfortunately, that is outside of the stream buffers, the wetland buffers, that's between that 2-year and 100-year elevation that you're looking for. We looked at the slope between the pump station and the EQ tank, which is where we picked up a lot of cut in our design. We couldn't cut that more because we've got big utility lines running through between the pump station and the EQ tank, so we couldn't cut that slope more. Another thing to point out is during construction, the area, I think this is the original approved grading plan. The area on the west side of the site, we were trying to pick up more cut in that area to the west of the drive, and during construction, they decided to leave. It's got some mature trees along the property line, and they decided to keep the mature vegetation instead of removing it and just to grade. So that was a decision that they made during construction. Another thing that affected our calculations is just especially the area around the tank, I think was so flat and it was so overgrown that when they did the original survey, when they went out during construction, they found some differences in actual grade versus surveyed grade. Might have also had to do with the fact that it was 8 years later when it finally went to construction, so they had to make some grading changes just to get the site to drain. So that accounted for some of the differences there as well. Metro, and then we looked at the area north of the wetlands along the river to see if we could cut some area along there, but it was determined that wasn't feasible just due to site access, and also that they would have to remove a lot of existing trees just to get some cut area. So it just didn't make sense. So as mitigation, do you want me to talk about that as well? Okay, we're proposing 4,600 square feet of reforestation area on the east side of the pump station that is adjacent to and within it's actually a Zone 2 water quality buffer, mostly through there, and it includes a little bit in the Zone 1 as you go north. And it's basically just the existing stream buffer is actually really robust through there. And so we're just proposing to fill that in even more. And it would also screen, there's a giant apartment complex to the to the west that overlooks this area, so maybe it'll just kind of soften the view of the really pretty new pump station.
Does that conclude your presentation?
That concludes my
You have
presentation.
2 minutes left, so, okay.
Okay.
Is there anything else that you'd like to say, or
Do you have
good
anything
shape?
else to add? That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would add on the berm, one of the things that I saw some nodding, it kind of didn't make a lot of sense out there, and we didn't realize the I'll call it impact on the yardage when we went into an area, because it was dense existing trees right through there with dense understory associated with it. And then we were looking at our side where we're cutting and the roadway going in at that time, and still what, that berm kind of defines a barrier between the Brookmead Park and this site, even though what residual of this site can be made available to Metro and Parks for future uses in there. To make that cut of the mature trees with the dense understory, and how that area, by its prior uses and the cleanup that occurred, had really cleared that out. And kind of, I'm searching for another term, kind of had, gone bare bones. So, and we looked at other properties of Metro, like Brookmead Park and across the river, and then to see if there were alternatives. But every time we came to a point, it was still where we needed to cut and gain it was in that window. And it would be detrimental, the clearing involved and such as that, as with the traffic from, about 75 dump truck loads going out somewhere. So as with the disposal.
Yeah, and I do just want to quickly add that the loss in floodplain storage volume is negligible compared to the drainage basin, and it will not impact the floodways of Davidson Branch and the Cumberland River, just due to its location being at the bottom of the basin. The tank is 750 feet to the edge of the Cumberland River. It's right there.
Okay. Great. Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes, sir.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I'll close the presentation, open up for public comment. Is there anybody here to speak in favor of or against in the audience? Okay, seeing none. Logan, we receive any letters or notices?
We did have some people reach out. I think they started in opposition, and then they were in favor once they talked to the applicant and got a little bit more clarification on what the whole proposal was.
Okay.
We as staff didn't submit a formal comment, but we acknowledge that the EQ basin has to go where it has to go, and it is in backwater of the Cumberland River. It's at a low spot, so.
Okay. I'll close public hearing with that case and open it up to the commission for discussion. We may have a question for you to where you can come back to us with the additional information. I want to clarify two things. One, the area of mitigation. Rebecca, can you pull that screen back up, please? That's the highlighted area in the right side of the page, at the bottom of the slope. Is that correct?
It's at the top of the slope.
Oh, excuse me, top of the slope.
Yeah, it drops down significantly from there, yeah.
And then is Brookmead Park just on the other side of, to the left of?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's Brookmead Park. And so the stream, Davidson Branch is on the right side. Okay. So is your mitigation, is that along the creek?
Yes, right there. Yeah, the area to the north of the tank, it's all densely vegetated and with a lot of mature trees and undergrowth, and we were trying to identify an area that was, I won't say bare, but less vegetated, that we could add to what's already there. It actually has a really well-established buffer along that edge, as you can see better from that picture.
Okay.
Do you know the approximate parcel size?
I do not. This project was designed, it started design in 2016, approved in early 2017. 15 acres? 15, yeah.
And just to close out, my questions are the purpose of my questions of the location of Brookmead Park, considering that this is, we have an error here, we have an opportunity here to correct, and if that correction can have some benefit to the adjacent park next door, that could be an opportunity. I, for some reason, thought that the creek was on the left side of the tank, but it's on the right. But I'll place that comment where it is for now. We may come back to it.
Can you speak to the percentage of the fill that's actually in the tank as opposed, like, accounted for by the tank and what it would hold?
Yes, I can. I think I can. I did calculate the amount of fill volume within the tank between the 2 and 100-year flood elevations is 4,500 cubic yards. And the tank capacity volume is over 30,000 cubic yards within the full tank. So actually there's fill, not a lot of fill, because the finished grade of the tank is 398, and the 2-year elevation is 397.2. So there's a very small amount that we would have counted as fill below that 2-year, but just between the 2 and 100 years, 4,500 cubic yards. And then 30,700 cubic yards total in the tank. Top to bottom, because the tank extends above the 100-year flood elevation.
And then to confirm, part of the uncompensated fill was to retain existing trees as opposed to going in and cutting the fill out and removing all the existing trees.
That is correct.
Do you have any gauge of how much of the extra fill that kind of accounted for, and any estimation?
I do not.
Okay.
I can look at the.
I think it's always an interesting challenge when you're posed with having to remove existing large canopy trees to get the cut that you need in some of these, and trying to weigh the benefit of it.
I'm comparing this to the other sewer projects that have come through recently that have uncompensated fill or have disturbance in the floodway buffers, floodplain. You know, given the use and what they are, obviously these have to be in low points. These have to be in those areas. I'm a little confused where the bust happened, but looking back, not on how we got here, more on what the opportunities to cure are. To your point, remove all the trees. I mean, that seems to be counterproductive given the sponginess that it takes away. 550 cubic yards over 15 acres is a quarter inch. I mean, it's really kind of what we're talking about. The last uncompensated fill project that I can recall this close to the Cumberland was at Capitol View, and it was, I think, 20,000 yards, and it was approved. This is, there was a big flood study done with it. It showed a very minimal impact downstream. This is a drop in the bucket compared to that. So just pointing that out for relative magnitude and impact, I think it's pretty benign.
We'll clarify, but it's a small clarification. That acreage count, the 15 acres, does include, it looks like the property line zigs along the creek going towards Charlotte, the yellow line. Rebecca, if you can zoom out a little bit. But point well made. I was wondering if there's, since we have strong representation from Parks and Greenways here today. I see that the Greenway goes along the river there. It turns, it goes along the property line, then it turns, and it looks like it goes across, maybe that's a drainage disc or a wet weather conveyance down to the river. Are there any needs of repair or restoration of that bank to support the Greenway that could benefit from the mitigation that's being proposed from this project? Thank you, Ms. Harrison, for coming up.
Hi, yes, Cindy Harrison with Metro Parks. We are currently renovating that park. The project has been out to bid and we're working with a contractor to get started on that work. That includes invasive removal in some areas and other improvements to the park. I'm not saying that we couldn't use some remediation or some slope stabilization in addition to what's planned. We would just need to look at that and see if there's anything that, in that regard that hasn't been covered with the current construction plans. So I have a vague, I'm not sure answer for you there on that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Again, the commissioners have any questions for Ms. Harrison first, please? Okay. Thanks.
Question, I guess, from a Metro standpoint and project standpoint, obviously to some points made here, it's a relatively small amount of volume. Is that volume tracked with other projects within the basin, or I guess maybe this may be a Metro question, to something to where it is mitigated where it can be in other instances, or just trying to understand it is a small amount, but thinking a lot of small things add up eventually, and we're always trying to be careful about the floodplain. Are there ways in which it's kind of tracked and understood? If there's other opportunities within it, it's kind of accounted for.
I might have to defer to Mr. Logan because of, he's in development services. My recollection in the past is when there have been big projects, maybe multi-phase projects that got variances, we did ask that it be tracked so there could be a tally. We've had several of those projects over time. I think on the Cumberland, given the size of the field capacity, that has not been something that we have done proactively. I think we could probably go back and get a rough calculation if need be, but I think generally it's the proverbial thimble in the ocean most of the time. Roger or Tom might have additional input, but that's my recollection.
Does this require approval by FEMA?
No.
I will note that all of the TDEC permits and otherwise are part of the package, so they do a good job pulling all that and presenting it as part of the variance request, and we usually want to see those approvals also.
That's a good point. I think we're working towards a motion.
Yep, given that I feel like I view this as if they had come prior to construction, I think I would have been supportive given what it is doing and the ultimate benefit to Clean Water Nashville and the overall mission. So I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Ms. Camp. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving quickly so we can get folks out of here. Next case is the case number 2024-00011, Opry Mills Greenway Connector. If the applicant could come up to the desks while Mr. Bowman introduces the case.
Case 4 on the agenda is case 2024-00011, Opry Mills Greenway Connector, 433 Opry Mills Drive. APN is 073-00001700. Inspector is MPDES. Council District 15, Jeff Gregg. Applicant's request: disturbance of the floodway and floodway buffers to construct a greenway and associated appurtenances, continuous mowing and maintenance of the floodway and floodway buffer, modified location of buffer signage, proposed as educational signage. Appellant is Metro Parks and Greenways. Representative Nick Tuttle, Collier Engineering. Comment: Stormwater staff. Greenways met with staff and has worked to minimize the buffer disturbance. Codes, no comment provided. Planning, no comment provided. Greenways, approved. Greenways has an interest in a greenway and/or greenway easement, and the submittal is approved as is.
Okay, I think you guys have heard how this goes down, and with that, I'll let you all introduce yourselves, and then I'll start the 10-minute clock.
I'm Nick Tuttle. I'm landscape architect for Collier Engineering.
Good morning, Mike Weiss, civil engineer, Collier Engineering.
Good morning, Amrita Chatterjee with Greenways Project Manager.
Cindy Harrison, the Director of the Greenways and Open Space Division.
So I'll start. What we're talking about today is a greenway extension, about a little over a mile of greenway connecting the Shelby Bottoms Greenway and the greenway that connects through Two Rivers Park over to the door of Opry Mills, connecting the commercial to downtown and all the way over to TSU through the greenway system. If you could go to the next one. Majority of this, the greenway that we're talking about is within the 100-year floodway and is in the buffer zone 1, other than this entry side next to the pedestrian bridge that is our switchback and the bridge that follows that. And so that's kind of what we're talking about with the disturbance in the floodway. And what we've done is we've provided a no-rise certification that proves that we are not creating a rise within the floodway of the Cumberland River. And we've also, you can continue to push forward, thank you. You can see here kind of how much of the general site we have within the zone 1. Next. One of our main mitigation measures will be the protection of the existing vegetation, both along the slopes on the Cumberland River bank, as well as almost all of the existing vegetation within the buffer zone 2. Most of our tree removal will be only happening within the buffer zone 1. Continue, please. You could go probably 2 more. Thank you. Another one of our mitigation measures that was mentioned earlier is the educational signage. We've proposed 3 locations for educational signage in lieu of the typical buffer signage every 100 feet. One will be located at this top kind of entry point to our greenway. One will be located about 1/3 of the way down the greenway. And the third will be located 2/3 just as you're entering into the Opry Mills parking lot, as we are limited in what we can do once we get into along the Opry Mills parking lot. Then I've included some of the demolition plans here where we can kind of show that we're minimizing as much as possible the tree removal and adding some specific notes that help to identify that any construction that will be going on within some of those canopies will have to be done manually or with light construction techniques in order to try to protect those trees that are existing and are, some of them, very large. And as you can see, most of these trees that are going to be removed are in that zone 1 as we are trying to protect all of the trees within the zone 2. Once you get into the Opry Mills parking lot edge, we are removing some of those trees, but we will replanting trees along that edge, and all of our planting is going to be native when you are within the buffer zones. Continue 2 more, please. Thank you. What we're talking about with the continuous mowing is a 2-foot section along both sides of the greenway path. This is a safety feature as we're providing a mowed turf area for pedestrians to be able to step off given a time when there may be multiple bikes trying to pass on that section. And then, as I mentioned earlier, our planting palette is all natives. We have some highly adapted kind of plants that are located within the switchback, but that is all outside of those buffer zones. That's all that I had for the presentation.
Okay, you got about 6 minutes left. Would anybody else like to add anything?
I will add a little bit about this project and the overall greenway system. This is a major section of the Cumberland River Greenway. It, as Nick mentioned, it's providing a connection between as you know, very dense commercial area to East Nashville, and vice versa, potential, employment, staffing, not to mention, of course, the tourist base that comes back and forth. So the ability to give people the opportunity to get back and forth off-street, multimodal in the vein of the transit initiative that we have now is extremely important. And we are also, the plan is to continue this greenway around Pennington Bend. And we've got several projects underway in various stages, partnering with developers who are creating fairly substantial developments around the bend, and they're making space for this future greenway and building those sections of greenway and maintaining those. So this is a huge component of the overall greenway system.
Yeah, and I'll add that the plans before you today have been modified and optimized significantly to minimize the impact to the area. We've relocated the switchback and the bridge area at the front end of the trail to move it out of the riprap area to eliminate any kind of impact to that or possible erosion area. So it's been significantly optimized and improved from what we previously had to further improve this.
Okay, does that conclude your presentation? Yes. Wonderful. All right. Presentation closed. I'll open up for public hearing. Anybody here to speak in favor of or against? Seeing none in the audience. Logan, have we received any feedback?
So we do have a letter of support written from someone. Otherwise, the majority of the questions were, why am I getting this letter? I live across the river because they do have to send within 1,000 feet of the property. So there are a lot of people, including this person that lives on Moss Rose Drive, which is not on this side of the river, but it is connected to the greenway, yes. So feel free to read that letter. It's printed out. I'll give it to everybody.
All right, close public hearing and open it up for discussion amongst the commissioners.
Can you speak just a little bit to the routing, I guess, of it and the intent to kind of look at it to preserve as much of that canopy as possible? I think you kind of mentioned it a little bit. Just love to hear kind of what kind of went into that part of it.
So for the routing, as Mike had mentioned, we pulled and re-looked at a lot of it and pulled the switchbacks further out of the buffer zone, but we are limited by that big riprap area right next to the pedestrian bridge. And then on the other side, you're limited by having to be along the edge of Aubrey Mills parking lot. In between those 2 points, we are limited by easements that were given or granted to us from the various 3 property owners in those areas.
And then are the dark trees the ones that come out, and then the light ones are the ones that remain?
Yes.
Okay. And then is it, sorry if I missed this, is it on grade or is it a bridge or cantilevered, or how is it?
It's mostly on grade. There are 2 bridges and 2 box culverts, and then there is one section where we are using a concrete boardwalk system to try to get us up and out of any of the flood zone, and also to protect anything, any existing vegetation underneath.
Since we have Ms. Mikhail Houghton here from Cumberland River Compact, I wanted to ask if, I'm going to engage the audience today. I wanted to ask if you could come up, Ms. Houghton, because this goes back to some of our discussions we've had between mitigation credits and opportunities within Davidson County or within Metro. Or do you have any cases coming up that are looking for mitigation opportunities? Any projects that are looking for mitigation opportunities that may be able to use this project as a benefit?
Within Nashville.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to go back to like the airport case as an example, where they wanted to do mitigation within the watershed, but were unable to because there were no available projects. And this one has a few tributaries that are feeding into the Cumberland and then the Cumberland River bank that could benefit from your program.
Not that I know of. I haven't seen any come before you all either recently that require in-county mitigation. We did just do the bank stabilization at KR Harrington with live stakes. And so that, that might be a model of kind of a vegetative restoration that we could do on the Cumberland River.
Okay. I just wanted to open up the dialogue to note that, here's an opportunity, if there is potential for a collaboration between our nonprofit groups and Metro to improve these areas through the compensatory mitigation program. So thank you for that, and hopefully we can keep it in mind for future opportunities. Okay, thanks.
So question, part of the greenway, will it be in the designated floodway area?
In the 100-year flood zone? It will be.
It will be.
A lot of it.
A lot. And in my understanding, I was looking through the package, but you all have already done a determination that it wasn't going to increase any flood levels.
That's correct.
And then one other question, and I was looking at the plan, and but do you all have an estimated number on like trees removed versus the new plantings as part of the mitigation plan?
I don't off the top of my head, but we are trying to, we've actually updated this, some of the plantings since, and we're trying to exceed the number of trees to be removed.
Okay.
Can you speak some to the stream crossings and the box culverts? I'm assuming these will be concrete and the greenway will be paved, so we're introducing additional impervious area. Do you have a amount of how much impervious area is being added from the project?
Not on the top of my head. It is 12 feet wide for about a mile, 1.1 miles, give or take. So just, conservatively speaking, that width times that length. Some of it will be that concrete boardwalk, so it won't necessarily be, as impactful as straight on asphalt or concrete. But there's a noticeable but fairly insignificant amount considering the project area.
Okay, any other questions?
So you've not quantified the amount of impervious area in relationship to the area of mitigation that will be added?
I don't have a number off the top of my head. 12 times 5280 minus the boardwalk. That'd be a probable. But I mean, we've hemmed in this as much as possible to limit any kind of impact for that.
But not the whole thing doesn't require variance.
Right. I'm just curious about the amount of impact and the ratio of mitigation that we often refer to.
And moving forward, because I assume that we will have more opportunities for the greenway in the future, that may be something that when you're coming for the variance requests that commissioners may want to have as part of their analysis.
For the connection to Pennington Bend, will that just continue along the Cumberland River? Is that where the connection is, or where is that intended?
There's a point where it, north of McGavick, where it comes away from the river for various reasons, part of that being homes that are so close to the edge that there's just no place to put the greenway. So we're more on the internal side of Pennington Bend, creating that loop.
I will just say, I commend you all taking this on, because I know it's a very difficult site. You're trying to make connections. There's not a lot of room and space to make them, and just connecting, especially things like this, to where getting north in this area is very, very challenging, and the potential to connect even further, I think, is really great. Into the community benefits really high, and I would just commend you all for taking it on and
Thank you. It is complicated construction on this project, and we've had support of the past and current council members here as well to work with development that's happening in the Planning Commission and Metro Water Services. All of us together have really worked very hard to come up with an alternate path where we aren't able to be where we would typically be along the river and still continue that continuous path.
I have a question for staff. I know Logan's trying to find it, but I thought greenways were exempt from buffer disturbances or some portion thereof. Can you help me clarify what that rule is?
We do have a resolution that exempts simple greenway projects, kind of at grade through farmland type of projects. So this one definitely is not a simple greenway project.
Okay.
And it's a staff approvable buffer disturbance, and I think they don't have to get a grading permit. But like I said, this one's a bit above that.
Okay. All right.
And I believe I heard it during the introduction that Metro staff worked very closely to minimize the buffer impacts. Could staff speak to that further?
We always suggest that they remove as few trees as possible, and they did really in this one. I think try to make it so that mature canopy could remain where it needed to.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I'd just add one brief historical note. Part of the reason for the buffer allowances, and we can on simple projects work, but others had to go through the process. When the initial stakeholder group convened to identify a recommendation for a no disturb repair and buffer policy in Metro, one of the envisioned benefits was the placement of greenways where feasible, so that has always been contemplated in association with buffers.
Thank you for that. Okay, working towards a motion.
Make motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion to approve. We have a second. Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That was a lengthy list of public-centric projects. It's always nice to see those come into the mix amongst our private development variance requests. Moving on, our agenda. So we have, let's see, 3 items. Logan, is there any need to change the order? One of them is the ethics training with Metro Legal, discussion about our meeting updates, our meeting time updates, and then proposed changes to the checklist and regulations. Any need to resort that?
Do you want to do the training last and just do the other 2 things first?
Is everyone doing okay on time, or are we running tight?
I know I've got an 11:30 board meeting.
This should, mine should only take like 15 minutes, so.
Do you want to do the other stuff first? Because mine doesn't really take too long.
Go ahead.
All right, so the, what did I do, 3?
Meeting dates.
Okay.
And
on the meeting dates, right now we're meeting on the first Wednesday of every month. We are making a proposal to change back to the first Thursday of every month, except for the July meeting, which would be on the Wednesday, because July 4th is on the Thursday. I don't know that.
Noted that Trey will not be here.
Right.
I know I'll be absent on the November date.
Okay.
I'll be absent on the June date at a conference.
I've also confirmed with this room person that every meeting would be available in this room for the new dates except for August. So,
Do we know when we'll have a 7th commissioner?
No, we do not.
Because it seems like we've got absences on June and July. And so that'll be down to 5.
Well, when are we getting our new member?
That's we don't even have we don't even really have a person that we're looking at yet. Okay. We're still in the search process. So then they'd have to go to council and all that thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So quick question, proposed meeting time still 8:15?
Same time, yeah.
Same
Same
time.
time, same location, except for August.
Is 8:30 an option?
It could be. I mean, we can.
between school drop-off and traffic, that's when I'm late, so.
We've just got to get the information out there, especially for June, since people have already submitted.
And the move to Thursday is that I have adjusted my work schedule so I can have Wednesday mornings, so I'll have to readjust standing meetings, but does that work for everyone else? If so, I'm happy to work with my teams. They can move their
Yeah,
stuff.
I've adjusted things to
Yeah.
Wednesday work, but.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, I've also adjusted, I mean, I'm not tangential, like I can rearrange too, but I think that needs to be a consideration as to,
Why are we moving, we moved from Thursday to Wednesday, why are we moving back to Thursday? Just to get back to the original?
Just to get back to where it had been for the 20 years prior or whatever.
Does that help staff? Is that helpful?
We had set up a lot of meetings that.
Right, for staff, we have a lot of routine and ongoing meetings, so the thought was it would revert back after whatever reason it had moved to Wednesday, but it would, as long as we can get it on our calendar, I think we would be flexible. Wednesday or Thursday.
Could I propose that maybe we don't do it for June, but do it for, that way we can arrange?
This start in August, maybe?
If that helps.
Is that fine?
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay, so June stay on the 5th,
So starting August 1.
or, yeah, starting August 1.
Okay, I will still be out for the conference, June 5th.
so just so it's clear though, it wasn't a recommendation of one of the members. It was just to get back to what it used to be. So there's really no reason to change it, other than just because it used to be on Thursdays.
Let me ask, is it easier to get this room as well? Because I didn't know if there was any difference in getting rooms as well, because I feel like having a larger space where more of the community can be here. But Logan, have you seen any issues in scheduling?
Between the 2 days?
Yeah, between Wednesday or Thursday?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah, because before we changed it, we were in the cave next door, and
Yeah.
then we were in the public school board room. There were sometimes
Yeah.
in here, so yeah.
Yeah, I like, that this is a great space that allows more people to.
Because we had to queue people in back and forth in the.
And
what's the
I
cave?
think because we were more traditionally here on Thursdays, other things were scheduled here on Wednesdays, which is why we had to do those alternate locations on those dates.
But I'll say, I have no issue switching back to Thursday. My team will do what is needed to get legal support, so.
Okay, so maybe in August, switch back to Thursdays.
Works for me.
I don't care. It's up to you. Does this need to be a motion? I'll make a motion for Logan to tell us what the schedule will be moving forward.
The one thing I will say, especially in light of us being short one member, I think Janie mentioned, if we have someone late, it could throw off. If people are opposed to having 8:30, that works for me, but I know that we all have tight schedules, so, and some of these meetings are running long.
I have no problem with that.
Is that present issue for staff?
No, and I think we have the room technically until 11:15.
We have it until noon usually.
Until noon, so it shouldn't impact it on the other end. Unless we have a really, really, really long meeting that we should probably stop anyway.
So we want to start 8:30 in June? We want to start that in June? You're not going to be here
I
in
will
June
be here
anyway,
in
so.
June, so.
Do we want to start at 8:30 in August, or do we want to start it in June?
Might as well start in June,
Okay.
make it one clean schedule change.
Okay.
Wait, the schedule changes August, right?
Yeah.
And,
So do you want to start in August where it's 8:30 and on Thursdays?
Starting August 1, because your
That's fine.
kids are out
I
of school
mean,
in July.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. We weren't
I
moving
don't
to the
have
June day.
drop
We're
off
leaving.
in
So June
June
day.
and July, so
June's Wednesday, and then the schedule
got
change.
the
that
kids
out
will
of the bag.
probably be here for the July.
Schedule change will happen in August.
I won't be here for June, so yeah, I think August, start Thursdays, 8:30.
Sounds good. All right. The other item I have is we as staff are starting to discuss changing the appendix that relates to Stormwater Management Commission and the procedures are and things like that. So I'm going to send that out, just that appendix, and I can also maybe send the code portion that talks about it, and then just get some feedback Staff's got their own opinions on what we want to see changed. And we'll talk about kind of how that moves forward and what needs to be changed, but.
So is the goal to maybe receive feedback from the commissioners and then submit a red line proposal for everyone to review? Or is the plan to kind of, for us to look at the current suggested revisions prior to then providing additional?
Yeah, I'd like to see the commissioners provide their own kind of markups, I guess, and then we can compare everybody's. And if we need to do like a special work session just on that, or, you know, time at one of the hearings that has less cases, maybe we could do that.
And does the staff have any, from a document control perspective, I run a lot of red lines in what I do, but do you care in the format that we send things over to make your life a little easier?
No, not necessarily. I mean,
Okay.
The markups I made were on Bluebeam, and they're just highlights and things like that, so.
Okay.
If you need a Word copy, we can send you a Word copy too, I guess.
That'd be great.
Okay, I think we may have that. That's all I have, I'm pretty sure. Oh, no, one more thing, sorry. The checklist, I did update the checklist. The only item I took out of the current checklist was the need to notify greenways in advance. So there was a requirement that the applicant notify Cindy Harrison in advance. We are doing that throughout the process, so we felt that was kind of redundant because she wasn't necessarily able to get a comment back to him within the time frame. If anybody else has got items on the checklist, I can send that out too, and we can also review that, but.
Is that all?
I think so.
So is the plan, go ahead and this will be the new checklist. And then I guess as we look through, because the checklist I think is part of the regulations, as we get through the regulations, if additional changes may be needed, we can just make it at that time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was planning to go ahead and send this one out, and then, you know, I can send this out and we can make more, we can update that pretty easily.
Yeah.
All right, great. Ms. Ladd?
Yes, I'll try to make this short and sweet. Every year you should really be doing, or we have to schedule the ethics training, and so I'm going to go through these slides. If you have questions, you can obviously ask me today, or you can email me offline, and we can go through them in more detail if that's what you need to do. So the goals of the training is understanding that you cannot accept benefits related to your role on the board. You can't take the concert tickets for a buffer disturbance. Understand for a vote on a buffer disturbance. Understand when you may be biased or have a conflict, and make sure you recuse yourself. Remember to disclose knowledge you have received about an agenda item from outside of the meeting before you walk in. Remember to articulate the specific reasons and basis for your decision. And understand that the Open Meetings Act prohibits deliberation outside of board meetings, and the Public Records Act makes almost all of your emails open to the public if they're requested. And then lastly, understand best practices for making informed decisions. All right, goal 1. And Metro Code Chapter 2.222 is the general ethics ordinance and provides that all employees, this includes any member of a board, which would be you guys, cannot accept or solicit any benefit that might reasonably tend to influence you to act improperly in the discharge of your duties, or use Metro property, services, or funds for personal purposes, or use non-Metro information for personal gain, or for the gain of any family member or other employee. Shall not continued. Use a Metro position improperly to secure unwarranted privileges or exemptions for yourself or your relatives or others, accept other employment which might impair your independent judgment in the performance of your duties, or accept any benefit which the employee should reasonably believe was intended to influence any action taken in your official capacity as a commission member. All right, here's some of the things that you can take. I will direct your attention to the term limited, because it is extremely limited. I think it's even interesting to point out that it's, the word trifling is used. So awards of trifling value, public, you're presented in recognition of public service. So when you guys decide to roll off, you're going to get that plaque. That's good. You're good to accept that. Gifts unrelated to a person's position as a Metro employee. Meals, beverages, food, promotional items, or hand-produced items of a value up to $25 for a single source in any calendar year, or free and discounted admission tickets from any single source up to $100 if the event is recognized as an annual fundraising benefit sponsored by a nonprofit organization. So there's a board of conduct to hear complaints and render advisory opinions about the standards of conduct or an executive order which regulates the ethical standards of conduct for employees. And any elected official or member of a board can request an advisory opinion from the board related to compliance. So if you really want the tickets and you really think that, you know, you can send in a request for an advisory opinion and they'll help you out. There's also complaints related to your conduct that can be submitted to the Board of Ethical Conduct, and the Department of Law investigates, evaluates, and makes a report to the board regarding whether the facts, if proven, would amount to an ethics violation under 2.222, and the board can decide whether to hold a hearing. If the hearing is held, the parties will be given an opportunity to present their case before the board. And they recommend, here's the things that they can do if they find that you violated the ethics provision. They can recommend to the council that you're censored, recommend that the person resign from his or her position, refer the matter to District Attorney General for prosecution, or refer the matter to the Director of Law requesting that the civil action be initiated for restitution or other relief. You guys don't have to worry about that. All right, understand when you may be biased or have a conflict and should recuse yourself. I recall, you have a duty of independence. This means you cannot act based on your self-interest, unbiased, against or in favor of people you know personally, or based on the interests of the director or contractors with whom your board interacts. You must be impartial and act based on the law and evidence presented to you. I have a potential conflict. Should I recuse myself? I think if you guys have all asked me individually, I would say err on the side of yes. I'm gonna go over the slides, but if you feel, I would describe it as like the teenagers do. If you feel a little bit of the ick and you're not 100% sure, I would err on the side of recusing. So yes, you should recuse. If you're biased based on a personal interest, for example, you're gonna gain or lose money fairly directly from the decision. That's obvious. You're biased or prejudiced for or against a party, either as an individual or as a member of a group. For example, you're close friends or business partners with someone and cannot be objective. You really want them to get the variance because they're going to have a pool party. You cannot fairly or impartially weigh the evidence because you've prejudged fact issues. What I'll say about that one is I caution you not to have or not to engage in a lot of activity that would give you that knowledge where you're not coming in clean when you vote, right? Next slide, please. Should I recuse myself? Continued. No, you don't have to if you will not gain or lose money from the decision, or you can be objective and do not believe your participation will create an appearance of impropriety. In that case, disclose potential conflict, but state that you believe you can be unbiased and will participate. We've actually gotten emails in the past on other boards where members of the public have directed the comment to a board member and said, they should have to recuse. They should have to recuse because I know X, Y, and Z. And what we do, because they know X, Y, and Z. And what we do in those cases is we go to the board member and we say, do you feel comfortable? Do you feel like you could be objective? Usually in those circumstances, we have the board member say something because we know that we're going to get a direct comment from a member of the public. I think that's what that's trying to hit on. So again, if you're uncertain, please consult with me because your participation in a decision can always be challenged on appeal. All right, disclosing knowledge you have received about an agenda item from outside the meeting. Disclose knowledge from outside the meeting or recuse yourself. Knowledge can include attempts to lobby you outside the meeting. Knowledge can also include your expertise or experience with this type of issue or area of town when making a decision. This is not something that needs to, be broadcast, but you can say, I pass this building every day. I think I've heard that on every single board I've ever covered. That's the kind of thing they're talking about here. I think most important would be something that that's more niche than I pass this building every day. Next slide.
What happened in that case? Did somebody get bribed to tear down the building?
In the case before, I don't remember the facts in the case before, actually. The case that's quoted at the bottom. I don't recall the exact facts of that. I'll have to get back. All right, remember to articulate the specific reasons and basis for your decision. Acceptable reasons. Okay, you guys have the Stormwater Management Manual, you have the precision decision. I'm gonna always direct your attention back to that when I see that you're having a hard time getting it to a solution. Why? Because that's what you're supposed to be basing your decision on. So acceptable reasons is the criteria and the relevant guidelines or laws. It's great when you can take that criteria and you can apply the facts presented at the meeting to the criteria. Past experience with similar issues or studies by experts or specific observations made by the public. I mean, you can all use these things, but I would urge you to always go back to your guidelines and what the law says, because you cannot be overturned if you are not arbitrary and capricious and if you follow the law. Unacceptable reasons. You feel sorry for the applicant or for the people who are opposed to the approval, and your opposition is not based on the relevant guidelines or law. Like, this project may be too noisy. We already have too much traffic. We get those kind of opposition letters all the time, and it just reminder, we always have to go back to what we have to look at for a variance and what we have to look at for the case law that's applicable to what you guys do here. All right, you can't talk to each other outside of this room if you're not all together. And you can't do it if you're all together either, actually, because it has to be in an open space. It has to be open to the public. So you should avoid the use of email. Actually, I would say don't use email to each other, period, unless it's a reply all email. Or you're only sending one email to, it's better just to not. But if you have a situation where you want to send an email, that's something we can discuss. It could be considered outside deliberations, especially if you're discussing a topic. So when we break and we're all like, oh, that case was terrible, that case was hard, or that's fine. But if you're like, I think that buyer retention would have been better suited in that case if he'd put it near the bridge, that's a no-no. We can't do that. When we break at the end of the meeting, I know you want to talk about it and you want to talk about how crazy it was or how hard it was, but you're still talking about it after we've adjourned the meeting. We don't want to be doing that. All right, so if you violate the Open Meeting Act, what it does is it renders your decision void. So you could sit here and deliberate for 3 hours. If the court finds that you violated it, it's gone. You start all over again. All right, next slide. What's a meeting? A meeting is when 2 or more members of a governing body with the authority to make decisions, that's you guys, meet and make a decision or deliberate toward a decision. You're still talking about it. In my example we've given before, like maybe it's over, but this especially is relevant when you've deferred, right? You've spoken about this case for 3 hours and then you decide to defer, and then you start talking about where the best place for impervious pavers are or bioretention or things like that. We have to do adequate public notice for all these meetings. Logan takes care of that, and there's any questions, it obviously comes to our office, and not something that you need to be concerned about, but if we don't have public notice, then there's, we could also be in violation of the statute. All right, we talked to, I think a lot of times if we do some of those, hey, let's talk about what's going on in the East Bank, and you're just getting information. That's not considered a meeting, because even though you're together, there's no deliberation, right? So on-site inspections are the same. If you were to go to an on-site inspection to sort of learn more about it, and you just talked about the weather, we're good. You guys can meet up if you want. You can have a chance meeting, an informal meeting, or you can go out and get a beer together if you want. But you can't talk about where the bioretention should have been on the case that you just deferred. Which you probably would want to, if I'm being real. Attorney-client meetings. We can have executive sessions with just the board where we just talk about a pending legal issue. Those are obviously rare and they have separate rules that apply to them. All right, next slide. This is more driven towards the staff, and I think the staff knows this. We have to have a detailed agenda. We need to make the public informed of what we're going to be talking about at the meeting, so there's no surprises, and the people who want to be heard, want to oppose, or want to be in for can actually appear. Let's skip to the next slide. This is more relevant. All right. Make sure you understand the work of the department staffing your board. I think you guys have a really good understanding of what the staff does and how hard the staff works to get you where you need to be. Before each meeting, review the agenda and copies of relevant documents or contracts so you'll go in informed and know what's going on. Ask questions if you don't understand. And I think the last point, consider adopting metrics for your board to measure whether you're acting timely or in accordance with your board's duties. That's more of a staff thing where we'll take care of that. All right, as I said, short and sweet. If you have any questions, you can always email me. And if you have any, especially with recusals or anything like that, I think I've spoken on the phone to several of you. Just please give me a call.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Ladd. Thanks for spicing it up. All right, with that, I think that's all the items we have on our agenda today. Unless anybody else has anything else, I'm going to look across. All right. Great, seeing none, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.